Hi, it's Lisa. I'm here with Elsa Cabral, who is the managing director at Bayshore Healthcare, and we're gonna have a conversation about women in leadership. Hi, Elsa. Thank
Hey,
you so
Lisa.
much for being with me. I really appreciate your time.
It's my pleasure. Happy to share information and experiences with you and your clients.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. So can you just I know there are so many peaks and valleys throughout this, but can you just kind of give me an overview of your career up to this point?
Yes, and I'll try not to be long-winded about it. So I would say, I've always been the kind of person that wants to learn and wants to grow and develop. And do you call that ambition or not? I don't know. I've always stayed away from some of those words that describe people in a specific way, but I definitely am someone who loves to learn and grow. And one of the things that I realized early on in my career is that I like to have options, and I want to be able to create a career path that I'm enjoying, that continues to inspire me to do, better as a human being. And so every time I felt that my career path was becoming narrow, every time I felt that it was limiting me from having other options or alternatives, I would start to get pretty bored. I would say maybe I would start to be a bit afraid of what that would mean. And, just limiting my options and opportunities was pretty scary. So that's when I would have the courage, I would say, to really seek other opportunities and to find options that would make me really just learn and develop as a human being. And where I've landed really when I look back in my career is that it really didn't have a lot to do with what I've studied in university so much. It had more to do with what I enjoyed doing, which was leading people, and more specifically leading people through change. And so, I didn't get a degree in that. I definitely learned that through just different job experiences that I had. But I would say, I continue on that journey of leading human beings through change, usually scary times, and try to really support them and help them see the world of possibilities and how we can all grow as human beings through change, as much as it could be fearful at times. So that's what I love. Where I link my career to what I focused on in school, because that still was very inspiring for me to be in the health sciences, is that I love people and I love the healthcare industry. And so when I look back in the past 20 years, that's where I've landed in healthcare industry, because it really is about, caring for human beings in the most explicit way possible. So that's how I would describe my career.
I've had the privilege of being one of those human beings that you have led,
Yeah.
and that care really comes through. So not only for the patients that are the end user of the leadership that you bring, but as an employee, what I've witnessed of you is that you are one of those leaders that has an incredible amount of authority, and what I've always seen in you is this amazing balance of professionalism and vulnerability. And I think it's that has made, I know myself, I know what it feels like. And I think you inspire employees who will walk through walls for you. And it's like that delicate balance of professionalism and authority and vulnerability is something that I think, especially earlier in our leadership careers, as we're sort of trying to figure it all out and be authentic and everything, that's a tough balance. So I'm wondering just how you got there.
You're really kind, Lisa. you always have had a great way of expressing words and how you feel, and I do appreciate that. The interesting thing is, I don't feel like I have struck a balance. I think that's the piece that is always, when I hear it, I think they're not talking about me. Like, Lisa's not talking about me. This is a work in progress. And so what I would say to that is, it's quite interesting when you think about the teams that you work with, and when you think about relating to your teams, you're really relating to humans, right? So at the end of the day, I think it's just so important to be who you are. That's not always easy to do, because we think we have to sometimes be someone that we're not. But authenticity is so important. And people do appreciate that. And what I've realized is people will know whether you're being authentic or not. And so for me, it's never really been striking a balance. It's always felt like, I'm either having to make very difficult business decisions that impact people, which is to me the worst experiences that I've had in my career. In some cases, and then sometimes it is the right thing to do for the organization, for the patients that you service, but there's negative impact, and that's when I would say, as a leader, I probably am the most anxious and the most stressed out. And so, what has helped with that perhaps has been just build good human relationships with people. And business is business, and work is work. And how you treat people, mutual respect is so important. And it's not about hierarchy. It's really, to me, about relationships, which to me, should be very flat. There shouldn't be hierarchy in that. And so mutual respect. But I think as well, it's building trust. And I've always been someone who probably shares too much. So I'm pretty transparent. I do share who I am as a human being. I share how I feel. I think it's important for people to understand that, and that helps build trust. But even transparency with work, right? Transparency around the vision. Where are you going? What are your thoughts? People will help inform that, and they'll be a part of that process. But that transparency does, and that honesty does help build that trust, so that, you end up, maybe it comes across as striking a balance, but I think it really just comes down to building good human relationships with human beings that you spend a lot of your time with. And don't put on a mask or, a uniform that isn't you when you show up at work. When you show up at work, show up in your true self. And I think people will appreciate that, especially when things are difficult at work and you're part of that process.
I love that. I think there's got to be a t-shirt that says that, right? That, don't put on a mask or a uniform, just be yourself, right? That's amazing. So has that ever bitten you? Like, has that ever been something that has had a cost to it for you?
Yeah, what I would say, probably, I'm going to reflect a little bit. There's a lot, when I look back in my career, there's a lot that I want to redo. People ask about regrets and things like that. I'm like, yeah, I have tons, right? But I think that's part of the learning process, right? If I was to redo things, I would say, I don't know if it has bitten me, but I think, being who I am sometimes hasn't put me in the best place from a career growth perspective, or, I would say being my true self sometimes, because I'm that type of person that, hopes that I get recognized and noticed by others. And I don't always feel that I need to be loud and speak up for myself. I always hope that other people can do that for me, and I don't have to do that for myself. That's where I would say my authentic self may not have pushed me as far as I could have gone in my career sooner, right? So it's interesting. I'm quite critical about it, and I think, what, I could have been maybe more aggressive, but that's not who I am. I'm assertive. Not to say that I'm not. And maybe when someone judges me, they'll say, "What are you talking about, Elsa? You're pretty aggressive. You're pretty assertive." And I don't think I am as aggressive or as assertive as I could have been. But then would I have been happy, or would I have been, at a place where I felt good in my own skin? No. So, did it serve me in the wrong way? I would say no, because it probably would have made me unhappy or uncomfortable in the way that I wouldn't want to be uncomfortable, because it's not who I am. So at the end of the day, I always feel I have to sleep at night and feel good about me as a human being. And so if it didn't advance my career as fast or as soon as I would have maybe have hoped, then that's who I am, and that's okay.
Right. So not being your authentic self, the cost would have been too high, even if it would have progressed you faster.
Yeah, I would say, what? Maybe I would have advanced farther and faster in my career. I would have been at a place where, I would have sooner than where I landed today. But having said that, is that worth it for me? And I would say no. I think, and I know for myself, being real, being me has, for me, has been the best approach always.
Okay. Well, I think it's definitely worked for you. As somebody who has reported to you, I can say that. You know, a lot of my clients and the women that I interact with struggle to get ahead in leadership. And they face both some external barriers, gender bias being one of those. And I don't think you and I are qualified to necessarily talk about intersectionality, but you know, that's a whole different ball of wax. But it's not only those external barriers, but internal barriers as well, right? What I've come to really understand as internalized gender bias. And I'm wondering if we can sort of take those one at a time and talk about, you know, if you've faced those that you're aware of, and what, you know, what you've done to sort of move past them, you know, and I'll let you pick which, you know, whether you want to pick the external or the internal, which you want to speak to first.
Yeah, maybe we'll start with internal. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think
Okay.
I could get going on that for sure. I think, you know, it's interesting. I'm my own worst critic, but I'm also my biggest cheerleader. So I feel like maybe I'm a bit extreme on both ends there, where, you know, I will be the first to judge myself and you know, how I've performed, or even my capabilities for something that hasn't happened yet, right? So I'm not there yet. I'm not super confident. I haven't proven I can do all these things, right? So it's interesting because I love to learn and grow, and at the same time, you know, it's hard for me to pin down. Is it an experience that I had maybe in my childhood or going through school that's caused me to think this way? And I've never done that analysis to sort of figure that out. But I do know that I feel like in order to take on a new challenge or a new opportunity, sometimes I have to feel, you know, a certain level of certainty about my capabilities. And what I've learned, you know, in my career, and maybe, you know, I wish this is one of those things where I wish I had learned it sooner, is just take that risk. Just, you know, it's okay if you're 30% there. You don't have to be 80% there. Or, you know, you should never be 100% there. Because if you're 100% there, I know I'd be bored. So, but, you know, qualifying myself to, am I 80% there? I think when I look back, I should have taken bigger risks where I was maybe 30 or 40% there, and really put up my hand and feel super confident about, I'm going to do this. That's where I would say the external piece maybe comes in on some of the biases, because, and you're right, I mean, I can only speak to gender biases, because I think, to me, you know, that's probably been the one that's the most apparent, where, again, I've been very fortunate in my career where I haven't had explicit experiences with gender biases, and not to say that maybe I haven't read into things that a little bit more that I should have, and maybe I've turned a blind eye and I shouldn't have. But I will say that I do ask myself, if I was a male in this situation, what would I do, right? And because I do see I've observed that, where I've seen male colleagues take things on where I'm like, are you kidding me? Like, you're not ready, but it's been great. And then I think, so why not do that too? Like, there's nothing that says, you know, just because I'm a female, I can't take that risk in the same way. So those have been observations, I would say. But like I said, you know, I am my own worst critic, but I'm also my biggest cheerleader. Like, I'm pretty good at giving myself self-recognition. I'm pretty good at, when something goes really well, I reward myself. I share it with my family, maybe sometimes a little bit too much. So I don't shy away from that either. But, you know, if I make mistakes, I'm the first to own it. And I think it's, you know, I try to balance that self-doubt and that internal critic with the other side of it is, you know, when things are really, you know, when I'm learning and I'm growing and I'm thinking, yeah, this is good. I'm the first to say, I'm feeling good. This is
Mhm.
great. Good on you, Elsa.
Awesome. Awesome. So it's interesting because the that part of just sort of stepping forward, even though it's uncomfortable, even though you're knowing that, yeah, I'm not 80% there. I'm certainly not 100% there. And I agree with you. If you're 100% there, you're overqualified for the job because there's nowhere for you to grow in that role. So that's not the kind of role you want to take on. And it's interesting because the stepping forward in that, it sounds like it's a decision that you've made, as opposed to waiting to feel really confident in that you've sort of made the decision that I'm going to step forward, even though I don't feel that confidence or that assurance that, yeah, I'm going to rock this or
That's
whatever.
right.
Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
So I think this is where I would say my best advice would be, what I've learned is I had a bit of an old school thinking, I would call it, where I would wait for the opportunity for someone to recognize me and give me that chance, right? To say, tap on the shoulder, here you go, Elsa, we've watched you work, we see what you're capable of. And I had that in my earlier part of my career. And some of it, I was lucky that I did have mentors and leaders who did a bit of that, right? But it became a bit of a crutch where you're kind of waiting for that versus really saying, I own my career, I own my future. And so I need to be the one to step up and say, this is what I want. And I would say the space has gotten crowded as well, right? So, organizations have changed. Talent is, abundant. There's just so many talented people. You don't have to fit a certain mold in a role. Like, you can bring different strengths to the role. It's been great, but the space has become crowded. And so you really need to own your career and own your future and know what is it that you want, and then go for it. Because the alternative, and this is how I balance things, what's the alternative? Like, that's sort of my most recent thinking. It's, used to be the what ifs, what if. And so I think, what are the alternatives? The alternatives is the status quo. Oh dear, that's more fearful for me to remain in status quo, that I would rather just take the risk and look at it from a different perspective to say, if it didn't work out the way I thought it would work out, then what did I get out of it that is really positive? And just really train your mind to think that way, but also to not have such a finite vision or end result, right? To be a bit like, let it be a bit ambiguous. Like, it's okay to kind of say, I don't know how the ending of the story is going to be. I'm going to write it as I go. And because then I feel that, without that finite ending, you can feel very satisfied about the journey. And so I think that becomes really important.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So what do goals look like and aspirations in that focus on the journey and not sort of being too worried about the ending of the story?
Yeah, so I would say before, I would never think too far out. So I would say to myself, what do you want to do in the next 3 years? I would say today, that time span's even shorter. I think about, how's this year gonna work out? But I do remember being interviewed and saying, like, where do you want to be in 10 years? And I'd say, I don't know. And I don't know, maybe that was a bad thing to say at the time, but I didn't care, because I really didn't know, what do I want to be in 10 years? Do you want to be this? Do you want to be that? I don't know. And this is where I would say today, I just think of it as, I'm on this journey. What's the impact that I can have? And I try to frame it within the year or two and really think about, what do I want to do? Because the world does change faster than you think. And you change as a human being faster than you think sometimes. So I like to keep the options open. I love the space that I'm in. I'm a big believer in community healthcare. I, I, I'm very fortunate and very lucky to have this place in this space. And what I really want to do is make change, right? I want to make this an opportunity where there's change, but the person that it benefits is the human who's impacted by their health. That's where, for me, it's the most important. If that's a role where I'm behind the scenes, enabling things to happen, I'm okay with it. If that's a role that puts me in a position of more influence and authority, then that's great. But for me, it's less about perhaps the title, I would say, and more about the opportunity. And so I don't know, I've been very front and center and visible in my roles, and maybe my next 2 years will be more behind the scenes, enabling things to happen without being front and center. And I'm doing some really good work right now with respect to that, where we're giving leaders, new and emerging leaders, opportunities to really be front and center and to play a more active role than they would expect. Because again, there's that traditional thinking of, until I get to this place, then I play this role. And I don't think that has to happen. We should really disrupt that thinking.
I applaud that. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I want to go back to something that you said about essentially what it boils down to is the work that I call the nose to the grindstone kind of perspective of, if I work hard and I'm a producer, I will get recognized and I will get promoted. And, you know, we fall prey to just working that much harder, and, you know, it will get noticed. It's not noticed yet, but it'll get noticed eventually, and that sort of thing. And I think that for a lot of women, they struggle with, they know that that's not going to work for them. And yet self-promotion, highlighting the things that they themselves have done well, that sort of thing becomes a real struggle. So, you know, can you talk about that for a little bit, about your experiences there?
Yeah, and definitely this is a work in progress, Lisa, because I find, I mean, there's now avenues for self-promotion that makes it easier and more accessible, right? So there's, you know, opportunities through social media to be able to talk about your work or the things that you've done. I would say I struggle with it quite a bit, and I feel I have to work at it. So it really is kind of the out of the comfort zone. It's stressful. I need to work at it. And I would say, you know, for me, what helps me work at it is when I think about it as not me per se and promoting me, but more about the work that I'm doing and the outcome and output of that work. And in that promotion of what you've been a part of, there may be others that are being recognized. And to me, that's, you know, very satisfying and gratifying. So I think, you know, for women who want to be able to display or share, you know, their strengths and their capabilities, you know, I think probably an easier way to do it is to really just talk about the work that you do. And you know, whether it's the outputs, the impact, whatever it is, you know, just sharing that and sharing those stories is a great way to talk about yourself without feeling like, you know, you're front and center and really trying to promote your own self-interest and your own career, right? So but I do feel it's become a lot more accessible, but with, like anything, the more accessible that it is, which is great, the more crowded that it becomes. And then it becomes a bit harder to, how do you really stand out? And this is where I would say build a network, right? Build a network of people that are have common interests in your career, grow that network, help each other out, promote each other through the process, because you know what, we can all win together. It's much more fun to win with others, in my personal view and experience. I'm a team sport person, than it is to win on your own. And I think that's where women, especially earlier in their careers, should do more of, is help each other out. And I do feel that people will notice that and pick that up. And especially when personally as a woman, you may be going through some challenges, right? Or competing priorities, and it could be anything. It could be anything these days. But the reality is when you've got so much going on and you feel sometimes as a woman, maybe it's, caring for your parents or friends and family and, or it could be, becoming a new parent. Today, it's becoming a little easier where men have stepped up and stepped in, perhaps, or parents have both shared that responsibility, but it's still a long way to go. Mm-hmm. And I would say it's during those times when women should be helping each other more. And sometimes it's during those times where they don't. And I would say, when I became a mom for the first time, I shortened my public appearances at the office because I was on split shifts and, all this stuff. And it was another female who said to me, "Oh, the afternoon shift is here," when I walked in at 9:30. And I thought, it's interesting, the thinking of that. And today I think, there's a silver lining with COVID, and I'd hate to say that there is one, but it's the optics around having to physically be present to have an impact. And so, that was 13 years ago. Today, I'm hoping that parenting, or whether you bring in a new pet in your family and you've got to spend more time training, or, whatever it may be, that people are a lot more understanding and that we help each other out during those times and maybe pick up the slack a bit and support each other. That's my dream and hope that if I was to speak about women in their careers early on, that they really do help each other out and promote each other.
For sure. And if you were speaking to men in the office, men at work, what would your advice be?
If I have advice for men at the office, what would it be? To be supportive. To be part of a team. And you know what, I've had very fortunate experiences with male colleagues at the office, but it's the same. Like, wouldn't it be great one day if gender wasn't an issue, right? Like, it's invisible. Like, it's just, for me, I have a hard time thinking about how gender influences careers, because to me it's not logical. I know it happens, but it just doesn't make any sense for me. So what I would say is, if there are things that may be gender specific in people's lives, then let's help each other out, right? We're all humans, and as human beings, let's just really be humans. And support each other, no matter how we represent ourselves or present ourselves.
Yeah, absolutely. Awesome. And I know you do a lot of mentoring, and that you really are, you walk the talk as far as helping others to grow in their careers and that sort of thing. And I just am really curious, if you could go back and give, if you think about Elsa taking on her first team back in the early part of your career, if you could go back and mentor that young woman, what would you do? What would you say?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, I selfishly mentor people because I get so much out of it. I feel, again, it's part of learning, right? There are these, and my focus is really university students towards the end of their university years, as they start to kind of think about their career. That's where I've zoomed in and focused on mentoring. And I feel that there's so much that we can learn from them. It's, how to stay relevant and fresh with your perspective, right? And how do you bring that to your home life, to your personal life, to your work life? If I was to go back, I mean, again, like I said, I'm not shy to say I've had regrets and I've learned a lot. I would say take bigger risks. I've taken risks, but I've been cautious. I have to say, I've been a bit of a cautious career pather. And I would say just to take bigger risks. If I was to go back and think about me as a younger self, I would also probably say find some really good mentors proactively. I've been very lucky that I've stumbled onto mentors, but I haven't proactively thought through who could really guide me in my career. And I wish I had done that. And I would say really just enjoy the ride. That's still hard for me to do. It's something where I think like I have a lot of fun, but it comes with trepidation, right? It comes with, the oh my gosh, I still think like I've got to be responsible for this, and I've got to like don't take this too lightly, and maybe more serious than I need to be. So just really enjoy the ride and know that it all works out in the end, regardless of how you feel at the time. It does work out in the end.
All right. Well, I've enjoyed this ride. Thank you. I want to be really respectful of your time because I know that you're off to another meeting and your time is in demand. And I just want to thank you so much for spending time with me today. It's been just wonderful to get your incredible experience and your thoughts. I really appreciate it.
It's been a privilege, Lisa, and a pleasure. Like to me, this is an honor to be able to share experiences. I hope it makes an impact somewhere, but I do feel very much that this is a privilege for me to be able to speak with you. I have the best memories of working with you, Lisa, and I'm so happy to see where you've landed and the impact you're having on women early in their careers. Such an important role to play. A lot of missed opportunities there. And so I'm glad you're doing something about that.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Yeah, it is very rewarding. And you are a part of the coaching and the work that I do every day because I've learned so much from you. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Lisa.
Thanks. And thank you for watching. If you have any questions or anything that you want to know more about, please put it in the comments or send me a message. If you have questions for Elsa, pass them along to me. I'm sure that she'd be happy to answer them. And leave me a comment and let me know what was most helpful or most interesting in this conversation. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.